The novel coronavirus in India has gone up to 81. States have gone into battle mode to contain the spread of COVID-19. Schools and colleges have been shut down, movie theatres closed, and several public events, including the IPL, postponed. All states and union territories have been directed to invoke provisions of Section 2 of the Epidemic Diseases Act 1897 so that health ministry advisories are enforceable. The Epidemic Diseases Act consists of 4 sections and aims to provide for better prevention of the spread of dangerous epidemic diseases. It is routinely enforced across the country for dealing with outbreak of diseases like swine flu, dengue, and cholera. On this edition of In Depth, we'll talk in detail about the Epidemic Diseases Act. When was it first introduced, and also its various provisions. Besides, we'll also take a look at some of the major epidemics around the world and the steps that are being undertaken to contain the recent pandemic COVID-19 that has now spread to more than 115 countries. As the novel coronavirus spreads across the globe and the total number of confirmed coronavirus cases in India rising to more than 80, the union government has announced that all states and union territories must invoke provisions of Section 2 of the Colonial Era Epidemic Diseases Act 1897 so that all advisories issued by the Union Health Ministry and also the state governments are enforceable. So let's take a look at what the Epidemic Diseases Act entails.
As India grapples with the novel coronavirus outbreak, the Cabinet Secretary on Wednesday asked all states and union territories to invoke the Epidemic Diseases Act 1897 to limit the spread of the outbreak. The decision taken in a meeting in Delhi said that states and union territories should invoke provisions of Section 2 of a 123-year-old law so that the Health Ministry advisories are enforceable. Currently, at least 74 COVID-19 cases have been confirmed in India. Around the world, more than 119,000 people have been infected and nearly 4,300 have died. Acting at the behest of the union government, the Delhi government declared coronavirus an epidemic and shut all cinema halls, schools and colleges till March 31st. The state government also made it compulsory to disinfect all public places, including government and private offices and shopping malls, every day in the national capital. The Lieutenant Governor of Delhi has on Friday issued the Delhi Epidemic Diseases COVID-19 Regulations 2020, which aims at containing the spread of coronavirus. It reads that action will be taken against any suspect or confirmed case if they refuse to take measures for prevention or treatment. Apart from Delhi, Haryana and Andhra Pradesh governments have also declared the contagious coronavirus infection an epidemic.
You see, the Epidemic Disease Act was brought in 1897. This was brought in during the British Raj in Mumbai. So it's a state government act, it's not a central government act. It was brought in during the bubonic plague in Mumbai. Now what this act strives to do is to protect the common citizens in a particular area when there is an epidemic disease or a dangerous disease. Once the Epidemic Disease Act is brought into place, the state government can bring in inspecting officers. A notice is published saying that the act is in place, it is a temporary act for a particular period. During that period, the inspector can inspect the citizens or the residents or the people in that state.
But what does the Epidemic Diseases Act 1897 entail? The Epidemic Diseases Act is routinely enforced across the country for dealing with outbreaks of diseases such as swine flu, dengue and cholera. The Act, which consists of 4 sections, aims to provide for the better prevention of the spread of dangerous epidemic diseases. The first section describes the title and the extent. Section 2 empowers state governments or union territories to tackle special measures and formulate regulations to contain the outbreak. According to provisions of Section 2 of the Act, where the state government is satisfied that the state or any part thereof is visited by or threatened with an outbreak of any dangerous epidemic disease, and if it thinks that the ordinary provisions of the law are insufficient for the purpose, then the state may take or require or empower any person to take some measures and by public notice prescribe such temporary regulations to be observed by the public. The state government may prescribe regulations for the inspection of persons travelling by railway or otherwise, and the segregation in hospital, temporary accommodation or otherwise, of persons suspected by the inspecting officer of being infected with any such disease. Section 3 provides penalties for disobeying any regulation or order made under the Act. Section 3 provides for 6 months imprisonment or 1,000 rupees fine or both on the person who disobeys this Act. The fourth and the last section deals with legal protection to implementing officers acting under the Act.
IPC section 188 says that in case there is a public order or a public notice by a public servant duly authorized to do so, and the general public or a particular person refuses to honor or respect or follow that order, then he can be punished. The punishment in such a case is up to 1 month or a fine up to 200 rupees or both. The second part of 188 IPC, section 188 IPC is that in case of refusal, and because of that refusal or inact, somebody else, general public, suffers, then the punishment is up to 6 months of simple imprisonment and or fine of rupees 2,000.
The Epidemic Diseases Act was introduced by the British to tackle the epidemic of bubonic plague that broke out in the then state of Bombay. It was passed in 1897. The then Governor General of colonial India had conferred special powers upon the local authorities to implement the measures necessary for the control of epidemics. However, this is not the first time that this law has been invoked in India. In 2018, the District Collector of Gujarat's Vadodara issued a notification under the Act declaring the Khet Karmasya village in Vadodara district as cholera affected after 31 persons complained of symptoms of the disease. In 2015, to deal with malaria and dengue in Chandigarh, the Act was implemented and controlling officers were instructed to ensure the issuance of notices and challans of 500 rupees to offenders. In 2009, to tackle the swine flu outbreak in Pune, Section 2 of the Act was enforced to open screening centers in civic hospitals across the city, and swine flu was declared a notifiable disease. With Leena Sharma, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Epidemic is a term that is often broadly used to describe any problem that has grown out of control. It occurs when an infectious disease spreads rapidly to several people within a country or location. Throughout history, there have been a number of epidemics that have left a lasting impact on society. Here's a detailed report on some of the epidemics worldwide. Throughout history, epidemics have been responsible for hundreds of thousands of lives lost. The reason behind the high death toll is that epidemics are usually highly communicable diseases that spread through the population in very short times. And the number of cases quickly exceeds what would normally be expected within the population. These diseases could be viral, bacterial, or even other health events like obesity. Throughout history, there have been a number of epidemics that have left a lasting impact on the population at the time.
Epidemic is any disease that has far-reaching consequences that is spreading very, very fast. An epidemic is something which is uncontrollable. So an epidemic disease is something which has spread very fast, faster than it can be controlled, and of course it is dangerous because it is spreading that fast.
The first recorded epidemic in history was the plague of Justinian, which occurred during the Byzantine Empire between 541 and 542 AD. It was responsible for the highest number of lives lost in an epidemic in human history, with over 100 million people dying, which was half the world's population at the time. The next big epidemic was the Black Plague, which mostly affected Europe from 1346 to 1350. 50 million people died from the plague that began in Asia and was carried throughout the world by rats covered with infected fleas.
After arriving in Europe, it killed 60% of the continent's population. However, the longest-lasting epidemic has been one that is still ongoing. The HIV/AIDS epidemic began in 1960 and is still prevalent. Even though the HIV/AIDS epidemic began in 1960, the world became aware of it only in the 1980s. So far, this virus has caused the death of 39 million people worldwide. Rare lung infections, rapidly advancing cancers, and unexplained immune deficiencies were rampant among gay men at the time, and doctors believed that it was caused by homosexuality. When cases were identified in Europe and Africa in 1983, it was discovered that transmission occurred via heterosexual activities as well. Medicine for treatment of HIV/AIDS was not available until 1987, and today there are about 37 million people living with the disease. For those individuals that have access to antiretroviral medicines, life expectancy has increased. Currently, this virus is particularly aggressive in sub-Saharan Africa, where at least 68% of all global HIV/AIDS infections are found. The reasons for this are many, but stem from poor economic conditions and little to no sex education. Other epidemics that have resulted in numerous deaths include the 1918 flu that resulted in 20 million people dying, the modern plague of 1894 to 1903 that caused the death of 10 million people, the Asian flu of 1957 and 1958 that killed 2 million people, the sixth cholera pandemic that resulted in the deaths of 1.5 million people between 1899 and 1923, the Russian flu that killed 1 million people from 1889 to 1890, the Hong Kong flu that killed 1 million people from 1968 to 1969, and the fifth cholera pandemic from 1881 to 1896 that also killed nearly 1 million people. The current coronavirus outbreak became an epidemic and has now been declared a pandemic because of the ease with which the virus has been able to travel across the world. The ease of mobility and globalization of today has ensured that the disease spreads rapidly through the world's population. With inputs from Leena Sharma, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Time for a short break here on the program, but when we return, we'll talk about COVID-19 that has been declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching In Depth. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed desire that the leadership of SAARC nations chalk out a strong strategy to fight the novel coronavirus. Prime Minister Modi suggested this to keep all citizens healthy and proposed a video conference of SAARC leaders to discuss the issue further. Together, the Prime Minister said, we can set an example to the world and contribute to a healthier planet. He said the planet is battling the COVID-19 virus, and at various levels, governments and people are trying their best to combat it. He added that South Asia, which is home to a significant number of the global population, should leave no stone unturned to ensure that its people are healthy. In some positive news, even as the virus spreads across the world, a group of 112 evacuees taken from Wuhan, China, and housed at ITBP Chhavla Quarantine Facility in New Delhi have started dispersing after being found negative of the coronavirus. 2 tests, first on day 1 and second on day 14 of the quarantine, were conducted, in which all samples have been found negative. Minister of State for Home, Nityanand Rai, and Director General of ITBP, S.S. Deshwal, met the invites at the facility.
मैं आईटीबीपी को इसके लिए आभार व्यक्त करना चाहूँगा कि उन्होंने कोरोना वायरस से संदिग्ध लोगों की जांच, क्वारंटाइन पीरियड में यहाँ लाए गए वैसे लोगों को अच्छी सेवा, अच्छा माहौल, परिवार जैसा माहौल और वह समय बहुत एक अच्छे वातावरण में उस पीरियड को गुजार सके।
Cases in most of the countries, but our country's efforts, government efforts, whether it is central government or state governments, and all agencies coming together and working as a team, they have facilitated our own citizens around the globe. The government is willing and making efforts to evacuate our own citizens from all parts of the globe, from all countries.
But the death toll from the coronavirus pandemic has risen to 5,043 across the world. A total of 3,176 people have died in mainland China, followed by 1,016 in Italy and 514 in Iran, the three countries with the highest number of deaths so far. Since COVID-19 was first detected in December, more than 134,300 people have been infected in over 114 countries and territories. More details in this report.
Since the first cases were confirmed in December 2019, the flu-like COVID-19 virus has exploded into a global pandemic, killing thousands of people and infecting over 1 lakh, with scientists scrambling for a vaccine. While declaring the novel coronavirus outbreak as a pandemic, WHO chief said the number of cases outside China has increased 13-fold in 2 weeks. China remains the country with the most coronavirus cases and related deaths by a significant margin. However, in recent weeks, China has seen fewer and fewer new cases per day, while the count in places like Italy, Iran, Germany, France and the US have risen. China is limping back to normalcy, with many major industrial enterprises resuming normal operations. It is outside China where the mayhem is right now. Italy, the worst affected country outside China, announced tough new restrictions on Wednesday, closing all shops except food stores and pharmacies as part of its nationwide lockdown. The country also vowed to spend up to $28.3 billion plan to fight coronavirus. The week also saw US President Donald Trump announcing sweeping new travel restrictions on Europe in a bid to combat the spread of the coronavirus. All travel from European countries has been suspended for the next 30 days. There are currently more than 1,300 confirmed cases of the virus in the US.
Look, we're in great shape compared to other places. We are in really good shape, and we want to keep it that way. That's why I did the ban with respect to Europe.
Several high-profile individuals across the globe have tested positive for coronavirus. Sophie Gregoire Trudeau, the wife of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, tested positive for coronavirus. The couple is now self-isolating. Earlier, UK Health Minister Nadine Dorries and French Culture Minister Frank Riester were diagnosed with coronavirus. Legendary Hollywood actor Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson and Italian soccer club Juventus defender Daniel Rugani also tested positive. The advisor of Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei also died of the coronavirus. The virus's spread is having significant knock-on effects on the global economy and daily life. Markets worldwide have reacted negatively, forcing finance officials and central banks to take action. Public functions across the globe have been cancelled or postponed. Major tourist hubs across the globe are closed. Nepal's government has shut off Mount Everest. Governments have shut schools and universities, US universities opting for online classes. Movie theatres are being closed and the release of several movies, including Walt Disney Company's epic action movie Mulan and Universal Pictures' 9th Fast and Furious film, have been postponed. Courts are holding video hearings, even churches have moved services online. Sporting events like F1 Australia GP are being cancelled or played behind closed doors. But authorities say cancelling or postponing Tokyo Games is not being considered at the moment, though US President Donald Trump has suggested delaying the Games for 1 year, saying the summer event would not be the same without spectators. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.